The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone, and I am your genial host, Roger Stone. I'm joining you today from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., specifically from the Willard Hotel. The Willard Hotel has a rich history, as it is as luxurious as it is fascinating, with a lot of quirky anecdotes about this hotel. First of all, I myself was married in this hotel in 1992. The hotel opened its doors in 1850, initially called Willard's City Hotel. Almost instantly became a symbol of prestige, attracting the elites of politics, society, foreign dignitaries, and so on. The Willard is intimately tied to the history of the United States and our politics. It's rumored that in 1861, during the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln used the hotel's corridors as a makeshift office, sometimes meeting with his cabinet members in secret. The word lobbyist, the term lobbyist, comes from the fact that those who represented special interests would wait in the lobby of the hotel when President Ulysses S. Grant stayed in the hotel. One of the most infamous political events occurred in 1947, when President Harry Truman called the Willard home for his meetings leading up to the signing of the United States UN Charter. It said that the hotel was also the site of the impromptu secret meeting between two future presidents, Lyndon Baines Johnson and John F. Kennedy, where they made the deal that JFK would run for president and take LBJ as his running mate. The Willard also holds a unique claim to fame for hosting the first ever presidential inaugural ball in 1857. The hotel closed down in 1968, July of that year, and then the entire hotel space was rented by Richard Nixon's comeback presidential campaign. So I actually worked in this building for several months, in addition to being married. And of course, there were false allegations that I had actually been in a so-called war room in the Willard Hotel, where evidently some aides to President Donald Trump, including Steve Bannon, Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and others, planned the efforts to try to delay the certification of the Electoral College in the 2020 campaign. That's untrue in my case. Any claim that I knew in advance about, participated in, or condoned any illegal activity on January 6th is false. I'm still not sure that a delay in the certification of the election based on the possibility of sending elector slates back to the states for reevaluation based on actual turnout in the election was illegal, but it was never politically viable. It was always clear to me that Joe Biden's election, despite the anomalies and the irregularities in the 2020 election, would be certified. Well, the Director of National Intelligence has certainly shaken up our national politics and changed the narrative. All the talk was about Jeffrey Epstein, despite the fact that there is no evidence tying President Donald Trump to any inappropriate activity regarding Jeffrey Epstein. Last week, the president said multiple times that the Epstein scandal was a hoax. I finally figured out what he meant. He didn't mean that Epstein was not involved in child sex trafficking or wasn't a pedophile. In fact, it was the Trump Justice Department that charged Epstein in 2019 for one count of child sex trafficking and a second count of conspiring to engage in child sex trafficking. The president now has wisely, in order to clear the air, has directed the U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to move in federal court to unseal the grand jury testimony involved in Epstein's indictment. You cannot indict somebody for conspiracy to engage in child sex trafficking without naming the other conspirators. It's also vitally important, based on what whistleblowers tell me, that the Justice Department also move to unseal the search warrants for Epstein's palatial home in Manhattan, as well as for his island. But now the political dialogue has shifted dramatically as the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has sent a criminal referral to the Department of Justice asking for the indictment of President Barack Hussein Obama and many of his top officials to be criminally charged for participating in what documents that she has now declassified as a treasonous and seditious conspiracy against Trump before he could be seated in the White House in January of 2017. Gabbard stated that Obama and his officials laid the groundwork for a several-year-long coup by taking intelligence reports from British spook Christopher Steele that they knew to be false and they knew to have been commissioned by Hillary Clinton's campaign and therefore were politically motivated to activate the deep state against Trump with the hopes of either removing him from office through impeachment or discrediting and hobbling his administration. Tulsi Gabbard said, no matter how powerful, every person involved in this conspiracy must be investigated and prosecuted to the full extent of the law to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. The American people faith and trust in our democratic republic, and therefore the future of our nation depends on justice. I obviously have a certain level of personal satisfaction here because now Tulsi Gabbard has proven that there was no Russian interference in the 2016 election, that was a concocted canard, and therefore as one who was charged and convicted for lying to Congress to cover up a conspiracy that never took place, there was no Russian collusion. Well, today I feel quite vindicated. The neocons, however, have moved very aggressively now against Tulsi Gabbard. As we stated earlier here in the show, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, emerged once again now as a hero within the Trump administration after she submitted a criminal referral against former President Barack Obama for his role in fomenting the illegal coup against Donald Trump. This is the greatest single abuse of power in American political history. It's a huge political dirty trick. It's nothing less than the use of the authority of the federal government and the extraordinary capabilities of our intelligence agencies, utilizing two false allegations, those contained in the Steele dossier. That's a report paid for and commissioned by Hillary Clinton, which falsely claimed that Donald Trump cavorted with Russian prostitutes while visiting Moscow on a business trip as a private citizen, and the completely bogus claim that the Democrat National Committee was hacked by Russian intelligence and that the embarrassing records of the hacking of both the DNC and the Clinton campaign was published by WikiLeaks. I'm very familiar with that false claim. I was charged with lying about that so-called hack, but that's because the judge in my case refused to let me call the former CIA counterintelligence IT chief, Bill Binney, who could have proved through forensic evidence and his first-person testimony that there is no evidence that there was ever an online hack of the DNC. And in fact, the material published by WikiLeaks was downloaded to some kind of a portable drive and taken out the back door. So today, once again, I'm feeling quite vindicated. None of this, of course, would have happened, these revelations by Gabbard, if neoconservative Senator Tom Cotton had gotten his way. Senator Cotton introduced a bill today that will vastly diminish Tulsi's oversight department, sending hundreds of her employees to the CIA, the NSA and other deep state entities. Senator Cotton said that this was meant to cut down Gabbard's agency, which he described as overstaffed and a bureaucratic behemoth. Evidently, Senator Cotton doesn't seem aware of the fact that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has just introduced a new proposal to cut the staffing of her agency in half. So she's 2 steps ahead of the senator from Arkansas. In actuality, Senator Cotton's bill was a thinly veiled attack on Gabbard's authority. You see, Tulsi Gabbard has been the bane of the neocon's existence since her appointment as the Director of National Intelligence. She has spoken out against the endless wars and shown a willingness to declassify documents that paint the deep state in an embarrassing and even criminal light. With her recent criminal referral of Obama, it doesn't appear that Gabbard will be going anywhere. She will continue her role in the Trump administration, putting America first. Let's be very clear. Some, like Hillary Clinton, actually accused Tulsi Gabbard of being a Russian asset. Tulsi Gabbard, who served her country as a combat veteran in both Iraq and Kuwait, still serves as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. She's also a crack shot and a championship surfer. With an extraordinary appeal to millennials and amazing skills as a communicator, I predict that she will be the first woman president. Perhaps not in 2028, but someday. Meanwhile, there's a new overnight poll out in New York City from Kaplan and Associates. 1,000 likely New York City voters shows the Ayatollah Mamdani at 38, former Governor Andrew Cuomo 22, Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee, moving up to 17, and former Mayor Eric Adams bringing up last place by 13% of the vote. That's with 10% undecided. Adams continues to be hobbled with a 68% overall unfavorable rating among New York City voters. I'm Roger Stone. This is the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Amazon One Medical presents Painful Thoughts.
I've been on hold to make a doctor's appointment for 23 minutes now. The automated voice has told me 47 times that my call is very important to them. I'm starting to think that they don't think my call is important at all.
With Amazon One Medical 24/7 virtual care, you'll get help fast without having to remain on the line to make an appointment. Amazon One Medical. Healthcare just got less painful.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back in the Stone Zone, and I'm Roger Stone, bringing you the latest political news. Well, delusions about Eric Adams, the current mayor of New York, being the most viable person to defeat the far-left Marxist, the Ayatollah, as I call him, Zoran Mamdani, have been dashed by a new opinion poll. It shows Adams with a whopping 68% net unfavorable among New York City voters. Adams is disliked because of his various credible scandals. He was indicted in September of 2024 on public corruption felony charges spanning a decade, stemming from kickbacks he received to influence his decision-making when he was the Brooklyn borough president, taking many thousands of dollars from the Turks to do their bidding. He would then allow them to inhabit with an occupancy permit a building they owned in Manhattan that was not up to snuff. He also staffed his administration with crooks such as his police commissioner, his fire commissioner, and his school chancellor, all of whom were forced to resign in disgrace. Adams' attempt now to reinvent himself as a Trump-esque victim of lawfare may have saved his job for the time being, but I don't know that it'll keep him out of jail after he's removed from his mayoral position. Conservatives and Republicans and Trump supporters are not wise to rally around this scoundrel, in my opinion, selling out their principles to a man who has no chance to win. The entire narrative that he was victimized and targeted by the Biden Justice Department because he disagreed with Joe Biden's open borders immigration policies is a fugazi. The truth is, Eric Adams ran for mayor of New York City as a full-throated advocate of New York City being a sanctuary city for illegals. And as mayor, he chose to put illegal immigrants in $500 a night hotels, such as the Roosevelt Hotel, as well as locating shelters in stable working class neighborhoods. There's a lot of talk about one of the three challengers to Mamdani getting out of the race to enhance the chances of defeating the Democrat nominee. But that candidate, based on this polling, should be Eric Adams. There is no path to victory. I've been in this business 50 years. I know how to read a poll. I see a gain by Curtis Sliwa. And I think Andrew Cuomo's campaign seems to be stalled over his inability to press the flesh. See, I think the former governor is afraid of that viral moment in which he confronts a voter confronts him and says, hey, my father or my mother died in a nursing home because you put those COVID-19 patients into the nursing home. That is not, of course, what he was removed from the governorship for, but I think that is what he fears. You're tuned in to the Stone Zone here on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and we're going to get into more of the greatest and most important political stories of the day. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is Roger Stone, and you're re-entering the Stone Zone. Well, Senator Adam Schiff may go down on real estate fraud charges, the exact type of charges that fraudsters like Schiff tried to pin on President Donald Trump when they were frantically looking to invent any crime to prevent Trump from running for president again in 2024. Schiff could face up to a potential jail sentence of 20 years if he was prosecuted and convicted on mortgage and tax fraud charges. Now, Schiff says that he's only being criticized because President Donald Trump disagrees with his owning two homes. That isn't the issue. You see, Schiff declared both his condominium in Burbank, California, the state he represents now in the U.S. Senate, and his home in suburban Maryland as his principal legal residence in order to pull off a mortgage scam, getting lower mortgage rates, lower insurance rates, and lower tax rates on both properties, believing that maybe because he was a member of the Democrat elite, he's above the law. A A finding from Fannie Mae, the Federal Housing Authority, asserts that Schiff submitted incorrect information about his properties while applying for home loans, once again listing his primary residence as his Burbank condo, despite not being suitable for a family of four. He also lied about his primary residence in Burbank, once again, so he could receive a property tax deduction under the state law under false pretenses. The bottom line is it's not looking good for Shifty Schiff. This is the guy who you may remember claimed that he had seen more than circumstantial evidence of Russian collusion with President Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, producing none. Now, when you ask him what were the fruits of the $30 million spent investigating Trump's alleged involvement with Russia, he will tell you, well, Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort shared proprietary polling information from the Trump campaign with a Russian intelligence asset. That, once again, is typical of Adam Schiff, a lie. In fact, the Trump campaign had no proprietary polling information at that time. It was post-convention, but before the fall campaign. And secondarily, any polling information that Paul Manafort may have passed on to a man named Konstantin Kilimnik would have been public information that anyone could find on the internet. But the other problem with this false claim is that Konstantin Kilimnik is not, as the investigative reporter Matt Taibbi has proven, was not a Russian intelligence asset. In fact, he was a U.S. intelligence asset. There are a number of cables from the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv back to the State Department, where basically Kilimnik was working for the U.S., sending them political intelligence on the situation in Ukraine. The bottom line is it's not looking good for Adam Schiff, and his imprisonment for these crimes would be a gratifying instance of poetic justice. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump took aim at the Washington Commanders of the National Football League in a Truth Social post on Sunday, demanding that they readopt their traditional Redskins team name that was jettisoned during the woke era. Trump said, "I may put a restriction on them that if they don't change the name back to the original Washington Redskins and get rid of the ridiculous moniker Washington Commanders, I won't make a deal with them for a new stadium in Washington. The team would be much more valuable and the deal would be much more exciting for everyone if they went back to their original name." President Trump also said that the Cleveland Guardians, formerly the Cleveland Indians of the Major League Basketball League, do the same thing. Trump noted that Indians across the country support his efforts and that the times have changed. No longer are we running away from our heritage to appease the far-left fringe. It's time for America in Cleveland to join the movement to make America great again by making their team names great again. These are team names that honor our Native Americans, not belittle them. In the meantime, the WNBA players wear Pay Us shirts during their All-Star game. So during the rarely watched WNBA All-Star game on Sunday, the women, in a show of solidarity, wore Pay Us What We Are Owed t-shirts, claiming that they are underpaid in comparison to their male counterparts. The Women's National Basketball League players certainly are paid far less than the men in the NBA, but that's because the NBA is a multi-billion-dollar sports franchise, one of the most popular sports organizations in the world, while the WNBA has lost millions of dollars, is only kept around because of the NBA's generosity. The salaries these women do make are not because of the market, but rather because the NBA owners feel bad and keep the NBA around as a kind of novel welfare project of sorts. If these women were paid what they were owed, they would be receiving zero. So they would have to front money to be able to play professionally. Because of the popularity of superstar Caitlin Clark, the WNBA may become profitable someday, maybe even in the near future, but then the pay may come up. Until then, the hulking brutes of the WNBA should be happy they're allowed to play for money at all. Meanwhile, a January 6er who's in jail with Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell has stated for the record that Maxwell is not suicidal. Oathkeeper Jessica Watkins, who was imprisoned January 6th and then pardoned by President Trump, said that Maxwell kept to herself inside the prison but showed no signs of being suicidal. Watkins stated that they were kept in open dorms with bunk beds and not cells while they were confined. Maxwell has been in the news lately after she said publicly that she would be happy to tell all that she knows as controversy continues to swirl over the release of the Epstein files. Maxwell has been kept alive up to this point, but she could be targeted by the deep state now that she's been more vocal about telling her story. A report a week ago that Republicans in the House voted against letting her testify is another fugazi. There was a procedural motion by Democrats that did not even mention Maxwell's name, but would have given Democrats control of the House floor, something they should not have because they are in the minority. I spoke to Congressman Tim Burchett, who told me the vote had nothing to do with Maxwell, and that was just another fake news story. We'll continue to cover this case as it develops, but for those who didn't hear us earlier, President Donald Trump has directed his Attorney General to move in federal court, which they did last Friday, to unseal the grand jury testimony from Jeffrey Epstein's 2019 indictment for child sex trafficking and conspiracy to engage in child sex trafficking. I have strongly suggested, based on a tip from a whistleblower, that they also move to unseal the search warrants that were issued for Epstein's palatial New York home as well as his island. Both of those are sealed on the motion of Maureen Comey, the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, who's got his own problems now that Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has fully exposed his role in the seditious conspiracy plot to smear President Donald Trump as having received assistance from Russian intelligence in his 2016 election. Trump fired Maureen Comey last week. It's interesting that there was a case only 2 years ago where Comey convinced a federal judge to deny a Freedom of Information Act request for records pertaining to the Maxwell case. So the cover-up here continues, and what remains to be seen, given the fact that this motion was filed in Manhattan and in the Southern District of New York, is whether a liberal Democrat judge appointed by either Joe Biden, Barack Obama, or President Bill Clinton will rule to keep the grand jury testimony sealed. It's interesting that Senator Dick Durbin, who passed a bill prohibiting the release of the Epstein material, is now jumping up and down and criticizing Donald Trump for not releasing the material when, of course, the president doesn't have the authority without the approval of a federal court to unseal the material that I believe will expose who Epstein's elite pedophile clients really were. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court of Brazil is continuing in its unjust prosecution of former President Jair Bolsonaro, even after President Trump threatened to raise tariffs on the country if they continued to try to destroy the former president with lawfare. Observers are saying that Brazilian officials are growing more stubborn and defiant, hoping to demonstrate that Trump that they are above influence from the United States. They may be the last country to mess around and find out when it comes to Donald Trump's willingness to fight. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is moving to strip U.S. visas from 8 Brazilian judges who are leading the unjust prosecution of Bolsonaro, showing that the president's administration is quite serious. Bolsonaro has been charged with leading a coup to seize power in Brazil, although that coup never actually took place, along with a host of other fabricated crimes. If they successfully prosecute Bolsonaro, it will be critaci, or rule by judges, and that means that democracy in Brazil will have been replaced. If you are just tuning in to the Stone Zone, you may have heard our story yesterday in which Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna announced several bombshell developments in the continuing investigation into the murder of President John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963. Only days ago, only because of her persistence and her tenacity, Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna of the 13th District of Florida announced that the CIA had finally, after 6 decades of denying such files existed, turned over files regarding a man named George Joannides, who was a CIA operative. Joannides, it turns out, despite the fact that CIA Director John McCone and Deputy Director at the time, Richard Helms, denied any knowledge of Lee Harvey Oswald, but in fact, Joannides, using an alias, Howard Gebler, was not only monitoring Oswald, reading all of Oswald's correspondence, but in essence, handling Oswald for the agency. It was Joannides who not only orchestrated the street scuffle in New Orleans, in which Lee Harvey Oswald was handing out pro-Castro leaflets, but those leaflets had an address on them that actually belonged to a FBI operative, Guy Bannister. Very curious. Clearly, the purpose of the street scuffle was to create the impression that Oswald was a communist and was pro-Castro. Who was down on the street with Lee Harvey Oswald handing out those pro-Castro flyers? No one other than Rafael Angel Cruz, the father of Senator Ted Cruz. You don't have to believe me. The photos are in the Warren Commission report. Luna also announced that the successor to the Russian KGB has finally agreed to turn over all of their records pertaining to Lee Harvey Oswald. Still up for grabs, NBC has an enormous amount of tape outside the Texas School Book Depository building that day, which many people believe is revelatory when it comes to the question of the whereabouts of Lee Harvey Oswald during the shooting. Ana Paulina Luna, the crusading Republican Congresswoman from Florida, continues to push NBC for those documents. If you're just tuning in, I'm Roger Stone. You're in the Stone Zone. Whatever you do, please stay with us. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is Roger Stone, and you're back in the Stone Zone. Yesterday, President Donald Trump posted a very strong tweet of support saying, "Congratulations to William J. Pulte, chairman of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, on the outstanding job he's doing. Keep moving forward, William. Don't let the radical left weaklings stop you." Now, Pulte has become one of the most articulate critics of embattled Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, who has steadfastly refused to cut interest rates on the American people, despite the fact that the two indicators that the Federal Reserve is supposed to, by law, use to determine whether interest rates should be cut, unemployment and inflation, are both lower or at the same rate as they were the last 4 times that the Fed cut interest rates on the American people. Pulte has been very strongly criticizing Powell, saying that he's playing politics with the American economy, that he's costing the American people billions of dollars, that Americans deserve an interest rate cut on their credit cards or when they go to buy a home or a car. In the meantime, Powell is also embattled over a very controversial $2.5 billion renovation to his already palatial Federal Reserve headquarters on Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. The Art Deco style building has a 40% overrun in its projected budget, now projected to cost the taxpayers $2.5 billion. So the juxtaposition of refusing to cut interest rates on the working families of America at the same time building yourself a palatial updated headquarters makes very little sense. Powell's real problem is that he testified under oath to the U.S. Senate, saying that the renovation plans did not include a private elevator for the Fed board governors, did not include a private dining room, did not include a roof garden, did not include any, his words, new marble or new fountains. Yet an examination of the plan approved to renovate the Federal Reserve shows that it includes all of those things. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna of Florida, who we spoke of earlier, says that it is very clear that Powell perjured himself while testifying to Congress about this insanely profligate $2.5 billion renovation. Powell misrepresented the facts while being grilled by Senator Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming, sparking widespread outrage. Powell has frequently endured President Trump's wrath in recent months due to his manipulation of the interest rates to suppress the American economic recovery. Trump has not held back any criticism for Powell and demanded that he resign. Powell may be forced out before long because of this ongoing scandal. If it is found that he lied under oath to Congress on the material question of the cost of these renovations to the taxpayers, he could be remembered as one of the most corrupt and ineffective Federal Reserve chairs in American history. And considering the central bank's long history of printing money for big banks while screwing average, ordinary, everyday Americans, well, that's saying an awful lot. In the meantime, we want to thank you for tuning in to the Stone Zone today, where we talk politics, news, history, style, fashion. Sometimes we even talk food. But we appreciate your listening to us here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. And until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?